Honourable Jeremy Buckingham.
Deputy President, I rise this afternoon to highlight the deteriorating influence of the National Party in New South Wales politics. I link this failure to its continuing dismal record of failing to stand up for rural and regional communities, especially the farming community. The announcement last week by the government of its strategic regional land use policy, now do you remember that, is the most recent and serious case in point, but by no means the only one. In opposition,
Order. Dr Phelps on a point of order.
Madam Deputy President, I refer you to standing orders. The member is currently wearing a badge which exceeds the size of the Legislative Council badge. As such, it's out of order, and I ask you to get him to remove it immediately. Put it in the bin.
take yours off too, Robert. There you go.
The member has removed his badge.
Yeah, the big issues once again from the government whip. In opposition, the Honourable Duncan Gay proclaimed with great fanfare a strategic regional land use policy that would, and I quote, identify strategic agricultural land and associated water and ensure that it is protected from the impacts of development. The policy went on to recognise that the New South Wales Liberals and Nationals believe that agricultural land and other sensitive areas exist in New South Wales where mining and coal seam gas extraction should not occur. The policy delivered last week fails to deliver protection to 1 square inch of productive agricultural land. All land, even the best of the best agricultural land, strategic or important or whatever, the National Party now wants to call it to be mined or drilled for gas under this policy. Most productive land across the state is still exposed fully to mining development applications and exploration without even the much-touted gateway hoop to jump through. In this House in the last week, not one question has been asked by the members of the National Party to confirm how this policy would protect regional communities. I suspect that is because they know the answer reflects poorly on them. There was some coverage in the media of the submission by the New South Wales Nationals Central Council Natural Resources and Energy Policy Committee to the draft land use plans. The submission made clear the Nationals' view that there were, quote, aspects of the government's draft policy which have not met expectations generated by the publication of the New South Wales Liberal and Nationals strategic land use policy before the 2011 general election, which set out the two opposition parties' intentions to establish a balanced state-wide land use policy. The submission contained 15 recommendations. Reflecting on the final policy announced last week, it is clear that the New South Wales Nationals Parliamentary Party has failed to deliver on a single demand from the party's own submission. The submission called for an additional land category to be added. Fail. They wanted the gateway assessment brought in front of the exploration process. Fail. They wanted no-go zones for strategic agricultural land. Failed miserably. They wanted buffer zones increased from 2 kilometres to 5 kilometres. They did very well here indeed. They managed to get buffer zones removed completely. Big fail. They wanted the aquifer interference policy toughened. Instead it was weakened and will no longer be made a regulation. Fail. They wanted the North Coast to have its own strategic regional land use plan. Instead it will only have its regional strategy updated. Fail. The ability of the National Party to deliver for its members in this coalition is zero. This is not the only policy where the National Party has failed to deliver for regional New South Wales and farmers. Earlier this year I moved amendments to the Noxious Weeds Act that will require the public landholders to meet the same expectations as private landholders when it came to managing noxious weeds. The amendment I moved reflected the National Party's own policy position as stated in the election commitment in the lead up to the March 2011 state election. Clearly the National Party influence in Cabinet has fallen to almost zero. It started with the Honourable Duncan Gay being dropped from the industry portfolio and it has deteriorated from there. Their failure to get changes through in Cabinet in the interest of regional communities and farmers raises questions about why the Nationals remain in coalition with the Liberal Party. One has to wonder whether or not the actions of the Liberal Party are intentional, and perhaps it is about destroying the National Party in hope to take over regional seats. The recent comments by Barwon MP Kevin Humphrey suggest that Nationals have started to realise their weakness in the Cabinet, but instead of coming out publicly against the policies of their Liberal coalition partners and in support of their constituents, they have become apologists for many of these policies, while keeping their fingers crossed and hoping their communities continue to lock the gate. It appears these failures by the National Party to deliver in Parliament are now starting to impact on their support in the bush. Polling since 2011 state election has shown support for the National Party is less than half of their 12.5% vote at the elections, sitting at 5%. This contrasts with the current Green support of 12%. The regions are ready to stand. The Greens are ready to stand up for the interests of rural and regional New South Wales in the Parliament, in the community, and at the next election. And it's clear from what happened today in the Supreme Court that the Nationals and the moderates and the Liberal Party have been rolled by Chris Harcher, who is the true Premier of this state.
The Honourable Robert Borsak.